Okay, welcome to this 12 Foundation talk. Remember, all these are what I wish they had taught me in school, what I wish I'd learned growing up, so that if I had known this at age 18, my life would be like, would have been a lot better. Things would have happened quicker, faster, more success. So this is all about the 4 pillars of the good life: health, wealth, love, happiness. Health, wealth, love, happiness. Today I want to talk about love, but to me, love isn't just romance, it's also your social life. That's just an easy way to remember it, love. So in your social life, now let me be clear on this. All these things are interconnected. So maybe your goal is to learn how to make more money or lose weight or be happier. Sigmund Freud says the purpose of all life or human life is to be happy. So however angle you look at it, most of that comes from social skills. Knowing how to read people, knowing how to avoid the wrong people, attract the right people, especially when it comes to making money. But it also applies to health, both mentally and physically. Like who you spend time around determines almost everything. So the talk is titled self-selection bias. It's a complicated term that I'm gonna make easy for you. But when I say complicated, I should say it's important. In fact, I try to do these talks like what's weighing on my mind right now. This has been weighing on my mind like almost every day. I'm just like, why didn't someone teach me what self-selection bias is? So here's what it means. In life, whether it's your business, your career, dating, romance, friendships, you're going to be under the magical spell and illusion. You're going to be tricked a lot. Here's why. And now in the modern world, it's getting worse because of social media. If you don't understand this, your life's going to have a lot of pain in it. So we're going to be talking about it here. So don't worry if you don't quite yet understand what I'm talking about. It's the whole point of this foundation is to make this clear. So I'm going to just explain it this way with an example. In 2008, or really a little earlier, let's say 2007, I decided to move to Los Angeles. I was living in San Diego. Now, people move up to Hollywood, where I moved, and once they've been here a year, I talk to them and I say, what do you think of LA? And a lot of people say, oh, I hate LA. And I go, how come? They go, man, everybody parties all the time. Everyone wants to be an actor. Everyone's self-centered and narcissistic. And I go, what do you mean? LA has over 12 million people. You mean you've met all the people in LA? I mean, there's parts of LA that are just suburbs with families living there, mom, dad, 3 kids. I'm like, they all want to be actors? They all party and go clubbing all the time. They're all narcissistic. They're all self-centered. They all think they're beautiful and look in the mirror like a narcissist. And sometimes the light bulb goes on for that person and sometimes it doesn't. I said, you are a victim of self-selection bias. Self-selection bias means if you move to Hollywood and you only go out to clubs and you only go out to places where actors hang out and where pretty people hang out, you're going to create the illusion that the whole world's like that, that the whole Los Angeles area is like that. But it's not. You've put yourself into that position and you're getting the results of being in that position. You want to make more money? One of my family members, I won't say who, I remember a few years ago, he comes to me, this was like 2000, probably like 12, America's still under the 2008 recession effects 4 or 5 years later, but a lot of people still don't have a job. And he says to me, Ty, he goes, America is the worst place to live in. There's no way you can make money. There's no way you can find a job. I said to him, why do you say that? He goes, well, let me tell you about my close friend. He lived down a little south of LA. He goes, let me tell you about this friend and this friend and this friend. And he named all his childhood buddies. They grew up about the same mentality. He's like, Bob doesn't have a job. George doesn't have a job. Frank lost his house, was repossessed, lost all his savings. He was scammed by the banking system. That was his reality. That was a group of people that selected, this is what self-selection bias basically means, they wanted to hang out together. And they created their own illusion that that's what the world is like. Now, at the same time, 2012, I was doing well financially, and I was hanging out with all these people that were doing better than they'd ever done in their life. So I was like, it's so weird. Like, one of my family members says, there's a world, a social circle where everybody's broke. And I had self-selected to hang out with people, and I was like, wait a second, everybody's making money. In fact, I got to be careful to remember where I came from, because I didn't start with money. So sometimes I have to be careful that my self-selection bias isn't creating a fantasy illusion that everybody's doing well financially. You know, that's why I don't like to always be here in Beverly Hills. I like to go out and see the world and realize, oh man, people are hurting financially. So if you see where I'm going with this, the whole world naturally divides up into self-selected groups. If you've heard of the book, The Law of Attraction, or The Secret books, there's more than one book on this subject. People ask me my opinion of The Secret and The Law of Attraction, and I think the general premise is okay. It's subject to abuse a lot. People think just positive thinking is going to get you what you want. It's not that simple. What I would agree with is the law of attraction, meaning you attract what you're around, because it's scientific. Self-selection bias is something you can Google. There's a whole Wikipedia on just self-selection bias. Scientists and mathematicians deal with this all the time. So this is real. I don't know, The Secret and the law of attraction is a little bit magical and mystical, which is fine. I'm not saying it's not accurate. I'm just saying I have mixed feelings on it. But I do agree with it on the part that's about self-selection bias. And I'm just going to keep going through more examples. I hope it's still probably a little confusing. I'm making this, hopefully, over this whole video, less and less complicated. And you'll see the importance, because you might be wondering, Ty, why is this even important? Okay, great. If you hang out at nightclubs, yeah, everybody you hang out with likes nightclubs. They've selected. All the people who don't like nightclubs are at home. Now let me show you where this becomes more powerful. Few examples. Dating, okay? So Tinder is very popular. Match.com is popular. eHarmony, Zeus, all this. Alex, my business partner, co-founding Zeus. Hundreds of millions of people on these dating sites. But billions of people aren't on the dating sites. So not every single person, every person who's single in the world is not on a Tinder, Match, online dating. So what happens if you're not careful, think of what online dating is full of. Online dating is full of people who probably, on average, are more independent, less relationship-oriented, because if they were super relationship-oriented, most of them would still be in a relationship. Now, some people, there's always exceptions to this. I'm not saying that you can't be on a dating site and be a normal person or a relationship-oriented person. But in general, and this has been proven, by the way, over and over, it's not my opinion, dating websites, if you go on Tinder, you're going to be selecting probably for people who like to date a lot. So a lot of people complain, oh, I went on online dating and the people play games and I go on one date and then they disappear. Yeah, because they're going on more dates, because online dating's become almost like a game. So if you want to be in that self-selected group of people playing the fun dating game, meeting lots of people, not really committing to anybody, then you should go on Tinder. But if your goal is, let's say, getting married, you're in the wrong self-selected group. Joel Salatin. This whole idea of self-selection started really resonating with me around 2014, 2015. I did a seminar at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. I used to do them there for a few years. And Joel Salatin, my first mentor, he flew out from Virginia. At the very end of the night, a guy comes up to Joel, because Joel's been happily married since he married his childhood sweetheart. They never dated anybody else. They met each other at like 16, 17, or 18, they were whatever, in high school. They got married a few years later, and they're still married now, 40, 50 years later. And I'm talking to Joel, and this guy comes up, and he's like, Joel, I heard about how good of a marriage you have. I really want to get married. Where do I find a good woman? That's what he asked Joel. And I didn't say anything. I was just a fly on the wall, eavesdropping. Joel goes, You got to go where good women hang out. And what Joel was saying was kind of like the law of attraction, kind of like The Secret, but it's more like this scientific thing. Like if you go, for example, to strip clubs, not to hate on strippers, but in general, most strippers ain't the most normal people when it comes to relationships. They'll admit that. And most strippers aren't looking to get married. So if you're hanging out at strip clubs as a dude, and your goal is to get married, you're in the wrong self-selected group. A strip club is full of strippers, male or female. I know a guy was a male stripper, so this isn't just against women, but that group, when you enter that room, you got to know what you're going for. And what happens in life, because we're never taught this principle of self-selection, there's a error that you make, and it's called the convenience error. So if you talk to a mathematician about self-selection bias, they'll talk about one of the common errors. I was just listening to a talk on this today. It's called the convenience error, meaning you go to where it's more convenient. So what's the most convenient place to find a job? And here's something, let's bring this around to career. We've been talking about dating and love and friendships, but let's bring this around to business and your career and making money, where you're going to spend the majority of your life, by the way. My stepdad married my mom when I was 8 years old. My mom's single mom. We didn't have much money growing up. We were lower middle class or upper lower class, whatever you call it, however you want to quantify it. But he came in and he worked at the post office. He delivered mail. So he made it was a big upgrade financially, because my mom probably made 20 grand a year, and here comes, she gets married to this guy and he makes like 35,000 a year. I remember him, it was like, whoo, this is a lot of money, 30 grand a year. And I asked him once growing up, how did you find this job? And he had grown up kind of like my mom and I, just not super rich or anything. So he said, oh, a friend of mine was working at the post office, and that friend said, hey, I'll put in a good word for you and get you a job. So the social circle my stepdad was in, when he asked around what jobs were available, that self-selected group was limited in their worldview. So the only suggestions they had for my stepdad were things like become a postman. So see, you become limited by your self-selected group. Right now, your problems in your life you're dealing with are repercussions and consequences of you not understanding what this 12 Foundations talk is about right now. Because no one teaches this. We kind of just go through this convenience bias. We're like, hey, all my friends were people who, my parents hung out with. The school you went to was out of your control, right? Your elementary school. Do you think it was the best school in the world? Did your parents actually step out of self-selection bias and really think through and move to the right country or state or city? No, because they're a victim of this too, and the cycle continues and people get poorer and more unhappy, and they're limited in their worldview, and their worldview becomes smaller and smaller until they feel trapped and depressed. They're broke, and everybody they talk to is broke, and everybody that they listen to for advice is giving them advice in this same teeny self-selected group. So that's the bad news. I know it's been a little heavy, but my goal for you is that by listening to this, you start making different choices. And as you make different choices of where you go, who you get advice from, who you listen to. They say financially, your income will be approximately the average of the 5 closest people you're around. So if you hang out with a whole bunch of people making 10 grand a year, 5 people, that self-selected group, that's their reality. You'll probably make about 5 grand, 10 grand, maybe 15. Maybe you'll be the slightly higher income one in the group, but you're not going to go far past that self-selected group. You can't just go to the group that's the most convenient. You can't just say, well, I was born in North Carolina, I was born in London, I was born in Australia, I'm going to stay in this exact place. Now, it doesn't mean you have to move. Sometimes people move too often. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying you just got to think it through. Don't be a victim of your circumstances. Do not do what's only convenient. Do what makes sense. Common sense is no longer common. I'm going to tell you, the formula for being a millionaire, the formula for being happy, the formula for being healthy, for having love in your life, all the things that people want, it's simple. It's common sense. But common sense is no longer common. And so you're going to have to do things that the common person won't do. The common person doesn't have common sense. It's a weird thing, but by you practicing common sense, you'll become uncommon. It's kind of like ironic, but that's what's going to happen. So that's good news. So I want to start running through some examples, very specific ones, that I think you should do, some specific changes, because I've kind of given you a lot of general information and abstract. I just want to give you some specific scenarios where I made a lot of mistakes and where I see people making a lot of mistakes. Okay? So, let me give you an example. Let me just start with number one. Number one, if you're single, this is what I wish somebody had told me when I was 18. Ty, figure out the criteria in your head of who you want to date romantically. Okay? So let's say you want to date, I don't know, what do people want to date? I have a friend, Andrew, he likes Latina women. That's his type. I would tell him, hang out at salsa clubs. Now, I know this is common sense. You'll be like, I already know this. Nah, you might know a little of this. You might practice this 20% in your life, but you ain't practicing this 100%. I guarantee you. I mean, maybe you are, then you can turn this video off, but I've never met somebody practicing more than, unless they've been trained in it. Now, the good news from this program, if you follow it's not just what I'm telling you, it's what common sense is telling you. It is some of my experience, but it's also other people's experience too. Find the criteria and find the group that fits the criteria. Do not do what's most convenient. So if there's a salsa club and it's 1 hour for your house, my friend Andrew, I would say, Andrew, if there's a whole bunch of clubs near you that don't have Latina women, now I'm not saying you should go to a club, but I'm just giving an example, hypothetical. Now, if he told me, Ty, I want a Latina girl and I want to get married, I would go, don't go to a salsa club, because yes, it'll have the criteria fulfilled of being Latina women, but in general, marriage types don't go to clubs. Trust me, I used to own nightclubs. There are 20% of the people in there are marriage-minded, but most of them are partying or getting out of a relationship or cheating on somebody. So I would say, go to instead of going to the grocery store you normally go to, Ralph's or Vaughn's or Food Lion or whatever, I'd be like, go to the local Spanish market. That's a good place to meet Latina people who are more likely to be normally, inclined, not just partying all the time. See where I'm going with this? I'm not going to think through every scenario for you, but that little shift in your life would revolutionize Andrew's life. But nobody teaches you that. So most people marry a person who just randomly was near them, worked next in the cubicle. That's the most common way people get married. And by the way, we know that whatever is the common way of getting married isn't working very well, because you have close to 60% divorce, depending on where you live in the world. But people, most likely, they marry somebody who they work with, which can be good, but it sounds too convenient to me. And in general, things that you're only doing them for convenience usually turn out to be the wrong thing. So you sit next to somebody and go, well, that's the world, that's all my options. And you haven't thought it through and used common sense and logic to make a plan. So number one, you need to create the criteria. Number two, you got to make the plan. And number three, you got to get off your butt and not procrastinate. That's the 3 ways to overcome self-selection bias. So let's pick another example. What you should do for the rest of your life to make money. Now, you might already be an entrepreneur, you might be wanting to shift, you might be in between jobs, you might have a job, you might be unemployed. But it's a fact, most people choose an occupation that puts them in the same socioeconomic bracket as their parents and grandparents. Why? Because it's a self-selected group, your family, you grow up around them. It's convenient, Oprah Winfrey says when she got her first big job as a news reporter, $3,000 a month. She called her dad down, I forget what she's from, Louisiana or something in the South, Alabama, Mississippi, something. She calls her dad. She goes, Dad, I just got a job for $3,000. And her dad goes, congratulations. You are now making more money than any human in our family has for more than 100 years, more than your mother, your father, your grandparents, because that was their little self-selected world. And it's convenient to stay in that little world you're born to. And so, you know why she's Oprah Winfrey now? And I think she was the first female billionaire, self-made, in the world. Here's why. She got outside of her comfort zone. She didn't just take advice from her dad and people who she grew up with that were convenient, because that is convenient to listen to. It's comforting to listen to people you've always listened to. She met a financial advisor who was, I guess, a millionaire or very wealthy compared to her $3,000 a month. Went to dinner with him, asked him advice, and he said, you know what? I don't think you should just be a reporter. I think you should start your own production company. Start your own company. Produce your own network, the Oprah network. And the rest was history. And now she's jetting around. I saw her not too long ago on Sunset Boulevard in her stretch, was it a stretch? Bentley limousine. And all that comes from getting out from her little, small, self-selected, biased group and expanding her mind. And boom. Now, she didn't instantly go from making $3,000 to $1 billion, but I promise you, if she didn't understand what you're learning today, and somehow somebody taught her, I don't know who taught her, maybe she got lucky, but she knew, she went, wait a second, I'm in a self-selected biased group. This group, me, my dad, my family, we all think making $3 grand is great. So it's like a barometer, a thermostat. You know, you have a thermostat in your house, you set it to 72 degrees. Once it goes there, it stops. That was her barometer of what financial wealth looked like, $3,000 a month. And so her little self-selected group said the barometer is set at $3,000 a month. So she just set it there and she hung out with that group. She learned from osmosis from her family, and the cycle of poverty was about to continue. But then she realized, wait, I got to get into a different group that'll reset my barometer of what's normal much higher. And that's what this is really about. You got to reset your barometer of what you think is normal. And that takes, what are the 3 steps? You got to have think through your criteria. What do I want? And be very specific. So if your goal is to, start your own business, if your goal is to become the CEO of your company or get promoted, you got to have that that very focused thing. If you're talking about dating or romance, if your goal is to just date around and have fun, that's one set of criteria, right? And then you got to plan. Where do I find that group of people that's already of the like mind? Because here's the thing why this is so important. You can't really change people. Oprah could have tried to change her dad and psychoanalyze him and go deep into his mind and have him lay on a couch and go to therapy and say, Dad, why do you think $3,000 is so good a month? And try to change him. But you know what? It's hard to change people. If you want to have a bad life, I can give you a recipe for a horrible life. Try to change adults. You can change people under 24, and I know people like to argue with me on this, but there's a lot of science. You don't change, especially personality factors. I just had Dr. David Buss here that, he was a professor at Harvard. He wrote the textbooks on evolutionary psychology, has a PhD in psychometrics. He told me, he's like, man, some people change, but most don't. Some people have the ability to change, but most don't. So if you make your life about going, no, I'm going to go to nightclubs and I'm going to force those people there. They thought they really wanted to party, but I'm going to convince them they want to marry me. Or, I'm going to go and my group of friends that thinks there's not much opportunity in the world and that pretty much you're destined to be broke, I'm just going to convince them, like, no, listen to me. There's a lot of wealth out there and you can make it and you could be, no, you're going to waste a decade of your life. Get your criteria, then plan out where those people are. Okay, today I'm going to go to this conference over here so I can hang out. Today I'm going to watch this YouTube video, because sometimes you can't do it in person. You got to find mentors online or in a book. and you start being strategic, and then you get off your step 3. Get off your butt and go take action. My friend Andrew, he likes long-term girlfriends. He doesn't like to date around that much, really. And he likes Latina women. That's about the only criteria I know for him. And I'm like, don't go on Tinder, because Tinder is more girls and guys who want to date around. It's like a fun game dating app. There are some serious people on there, about 20% of them, but 80%, I know. I had the co-founder of Tinder over at my house. I know him. I mean, trust me, Tinder is a fun site. If you're not really looking for a serious relationship, you just date lots of people and you have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is wrong if you're like my friend Andrew and your criteria is you want a long-term relationship, so you make your plan, then he's got to get off his butt. Where are the long-term relationship Latina girls at? Maybe they're at a certain gym in his city where all the Latina women hang out, or maybe they are in a certain section of town. You know, a lot of people, different cities, you got Chinatown, you got, if you live in New York, you got the Bronx is full of Puerto Ricans, you got, this area is full of Russians and Jamaicans and all that. That's self-selected groups. So you can go into the self-selected group of your choosing. So self-selected groups, the ones we grow up with, we're kind of a victim of them because we don't have a choice. You don't choose your parents. But as you get older, and right now, if you're watching this, you have the ability to start picking your group. You want to become a millionaire? You can't just hang out with people who make 10 grand a year. Now, I'm not saying you should get rid of all your friends who aren't rich. No. You can be balanced. I got some friends that are broke, some that are average, and some that are wealthy. You need a mix. Because my criteria is not only to be wealthy. So for me, when I made my plan in my self-selected group, I was like, my criteria, I want fun people, loyal people, ideally, if they're above average, happiness, wealth, stuff like that. So I was like, I'll have a mixed group. And I made that plan. And then I got off my butt and I started forming my social circle. I started looking through my phone. Who are the 10 people I should spend more time with? And who are the 10 people I should spend less time with? Remember that. You can't just go through your phone and through your brain who you should spend more time with. You got to cut some to add some. And that's painful. And it's not convenient. But it works. And the whole point of this 12 Foundation, I didn't promise I'm going to tell you the simplest thing. I said I'm going to tell you what works. Some of you have family members that are dragging you down. It's a self-selected group. I'm not saying you should never talk to your mom or your uncle or your dad or your stepdad or your cousin or your brother or sister. But if they're dragging you down, don't be in that self-selected group, because really it wasn't self-selected. You were born into it. Spend less time. Make your criteria. Okay, I only want to be around family members that are blankety blank, that are ambitious, that aren't lazy, that aren't dysfunctional. Make that criteria, then make your plan. Write it out. Bob, your uncle, does he meet the criteria? Yes or no? No, spend less time with him. Mom, meet the criteria? Yes, no. You can be just take out a yellow pad of paper just like this and just write it out. I do that. I make little plans like that all the time. You don't have to get fancy. You don't have to do Excel. Just make a simple one. It's better to write it down in 5 minutes. That's the sad thing about life. I should make a whole 12 Foundation video on this. 80% of our problems can be fixed with 10 minutes of deep thinking with a notepad and pen, and then doing step 3, which is getting off our butt and doing it. But you got to remember, some people get off their butt and do it before they have a plan. You don't build a house till you have the architect create the plan. You're the architect of your life. Self-selected bias, if you're a victim of it, somebody else is the architect of your life. So when it comes to your health, your wealth, your love, your happiness, you got to build it. A lot of people grow up eating the food. If they grew up eating Twinkies and junk food, that's self-selected diet bias, you could say. They eat junk food. The average person who's born poor stays poor. Same socioeconomic level or threshold. 80% of the time, that's what happens. There's only a few people who break out. And the people that break out either get lucky or they know what and practice what you're learning today. Make your plan. Who you cutting? Who you spending more time with? Who you cutting? Who you making more? And the list always changes. Remember, experiment with it. If it doesn't go well, if you cut somebody and then in hindsight you realize, damn, they were a good person, I should spend more time, bring them back in your life. You don't burn bridges. Don't call people up and say, Susie, I used to hang out with you, but I was doing a little 12 Foundations program and I wrote out on a notepad, cut out horrible people, and you're one of the horrible people. Nah, just fade away. The best remedy, the best solution, the best way to deal with cuckoo people is just slowly fade away. If you fade away too fast, sometimes they're like, where are you? And they come hunting you down. They're crazy, remember? Stalkers are crazy. So if you ain't making enough money, what's your criteria? What is your criteria? Okay, you want to make 100 grand a year? Then figure out where's your self-selected group. First, start with your childhood. Are you being held back by the mindset of spending time around your family too much? Now, hopefully you're lucky. If you're lucky, if your family doesn't hold you back, that's great. Then you can keep spending tons of time, more time with them. But if your family holds you back, you're going to have to phase them out a little bit. Not completely. I don't recommend, unless you have a horrific family, but be sensible. Remember, this is all about common sense. So if you take this and then you go, I'm never going to talk to my mom and dad again, that's not common sense. It's not who you spend 20% of your time around that's going to hurt you. It's who you spend 80%. So you could keep people that you have to keep around for whatever reason. Just minimize the time with them. And then, who are you going to do 80% with? Who do you need to hang out more with? I can remember one of the big breakthroughs I had, take real estate. I have a mentor, this guy named Richard. It's this old guy. I always try to do YouTube videos. He doesn't want to come on camera. But I knew him for a while and learned things here and mindset things here. He told me how to optimize my taxes and this as I was coming up financially. And it wasn't until about 2 years of knowing him that I found out he had just sold his real estate. He had done what's called a REIT roll-up. So he'd rolled all his existing real estate up into a it's called a REIT, if you don't know what that is, like a mutual fund in New York. And he had made $2 billion or something like that. I mean, I'm not sure exact amount of money, but it could be as high as $2 billion. He's pretty secretive about it. But the guy got money, major money, more than he'll ever need. By the way, whether you have 200 million or 2 billion, you can only spend so much money, right? Unless you're just doing it for ego. But the point being, I'm like, man, I'm happy I spent time around him. Because what I didn't realize by me because I had to purposely seek him out. I used to do these little events at my house, and you can consider doing these. I would do them every Sunday. You don't have to do them that much. You can do them once a month. I'd just invite a whole bunch of people that I thought were good people and started out small, 3 or 4, and I asked them to bring a like-minded person with them. For no reason. We just hung out, had drink. It was like a barbecue. You could watch a basketball game if it was, sports, whatever. And I started selecting my group. I didn't let my group just come to me out of convenience. I purposely would be like, that's a good person. And then one guy, this guy from Miami, he brought this Richard guy. He said, oh, Richard's visited me. This is the guy, by the way. Richard is the one who I think made a couple billion. For sure, hundreds of millions. And once Richard was at my house, I got to know him, and I was just like, this is what I'm looking for. He meets my criteria. He was a nice guy, but he knew stuff. If you want to make money, and you got to be around people who know stuff. You can't be around idiots. And I could just tell. It's just like common sense. It's just common sense. You'll know when you're around somebody, if your head's screwed on straight. You can tell when somebody's an idiot, when someone's clueless, when somebody's cynical. Like this guy, you could tell he was a wise guy. He was 20, 30, 40 years older than me. Dude made a ton of money. I'm like, I'm going to spend more time with him. So I made a plan, and I was like, Maya, once a month I'm going to call Richard. I actually made an Excel spreadsheet at one point in my life. I don't do this anymore. To make sure I was calling and keeping up and FaceTiming and having lunches and dinners with the people that were the most like my given criteria at any time. So when I was trying to learn how to like lift weights, I might add to that list, you know, Danny Hester, former Mr. Olympia. I met him through another person I knew, and we were just vague, you know, acquaintances. And then I started like, okay, I need to call him more and hang out with him. Because if you hang out with Mr. Olympia, you learn a tip here and you start learning by osmosis. And this whole talk is really like predicated on the thought that as humans, when it comes to your health, wealth, love, and happiness, you learn it through osmosis like a sponge from other people. And so you make a bubble in life and you choose who comes into the bubble. You know, like those hamster balls that roll down, you stick a hamster and you let your hamster roll around your living room? That's what you have to do in this world. Maybe I could summarize everything I'm saying. But one difference, important difference, humans are social creatures. There's a great book you can read by Lieberman. It's called Social. And it's about how the hardwiring our brain, everything that'll make you happy and how you learn, and everything is based on social interaction. So you don't want to be alone in the hamster ball. So you can't just make a ball and go, I'm just going to spend. I mean, that'd be great if it worked. It just doesn't work. You'll be depressed. You'll make less money. You know, life doesn't go well. So what you need to do is make your life with this plastic bubble and then invite people in and sometimes kick people out. And then you just roll through this world doing whatever it is your goals are, and inside that bubble are the good people. And let me tell you, I'm not saying good like morally, these are evil. I'm not talking about heaven or hell or whatever you believe. I'm just saying, I'm defining a good person as someone who helps you and you help them. You scratch their back, they scratch your back. Dr. David Buss calls this WTRs, welfare trade-off ratio, or reciprocal altruism, meaning the bad people are the ones you scratch their back, you help them, and then you go, can you do mine? And they go, oh, sorry, I'm busy. We all know somebody. I remember helping somebody move one time. Like they called me out of the blue, will you help me move? And it was like a Saturday morning. I woke up early. I went over there, helped them move, all this stuff. They didn't pay me nothing. Like a few years later, I was moving. I called them up, and they're like, oh, I'd love to come, and they made up some excuse. See, that's not what you want. That's welfare trade-off ratio. Their welfare, in that case, they thought was more important than mine. They wanted me to help them, but they wouldn't help me. And so you got to fill up that hamster ball with people who scratch your back when you scratch theirs. Now remember, don't be selfish and don't just say, come in. Because a lot of times when I give this talk, even though I haven't given this talk that much publicly, you guys are getting a lot of my insider stuff, what's going on in my brain deep down. You know, one mistake people make is they go, okay, I want to hang around people who make a lot of money. So they start seeking them out, and then I'm going, well, why would they want to hang out with you? You're not helping them with anything. You're not offering. You know, I had an investor, a very wealthy guy named Walter, and he put money in a business, but he had been married and then he was single. And he said, I haven't been single. He was married like 30 years. So I scratched his back. Like I was like, hey, I'm single. I'm in Hollywood. I'll start taking you out socially. So he scratched my back. He put money into a business that I had started. But he did it not just because he wanted a return on his money, but because he wanted other things. So when you're building your bubble and you're bringing people in, find out what their criteria is too. Don't be selfish. Don't be a, Captain Me Planet. What can you do to scratch their back? Because the more you scratch their back, then they decide, and remember, the good people in the world understand the self-selection bias. They understand they want to create a bubble that's not biased, that's full of people that they enjoy being around. Okay? So, look through my notes. Anything else I wanted to talk about? So, I'm going to go through a few more examples, and I hope you're getting it now more. This fancy term, self-selection bias. but it's a fancy way of just saying you got to pick where you hang out. You gotta pick, don't just read the books. And I hate this. When I go to Barnes & Noble, the bookstore, they put their books out close to the front door that they want you to buy. Well, Barnes & Noble is a corporation. They don't care about me. They put books out that for whatever reason they think they're important. So they're creating a bias right there. And trust me, it works. Because most people just do what's convenient. So most people walk, I've been guilty of it. You walk into Barnes & Noble, you're like, oh, there's thousands of books. Oh, what's this? It's right by the door on the little rack there. Doesn't interest me that much, but I'm just going to grab it and read it. Don't do that. That's self-selected bias. Barnes & Noble self-selected that group and they tried to shove it down your throat. What I do is I go into that Barnes & Noble, I go, what do I want? Remember the 3 steps? I have my plan. I have my criteria ahead of time. Criteria is, okay, I want to get a book on psychology. I want to get a book on building a business. I want to get a book about investing in real estate. I want to get a book about being happier. Then I make my plan. My plan usually is go to Barnes & Noble and walk right past the front books they're trying to push on me. And then I get off my butt, I don't procrastinate, and I go straight to that shelf, even if it's on the 3rd floor. And you'd be amazed at how many people won't walk up, even if it's an escalator. Humans, we become so lazy nowadays, people won't walk upstairs to get a book that's actually going to help them. When you're on YouTube videos, don't just go to the YouTube video that is the first search result. Sometimes it's right, but a lot of times YouTube or Google is biased. They're trying to push something. It's an advertisement or it's some algorithm that's maybe not in your best interest. Don't do what's convenient. Say, I need to watch a YouTube video. I want to watch one on Elon Musk. Like the other day, I was wanting to watch a video with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. So I typed in like Warren Buffett investing advice. And the first video that comes up is him and it's some stupid CNN 4-minute video. And I almost caught myself just going, oh, let me watch this. But it was a stupid one. It was on some current event. Like, it was not relevant for my life, but it was convenient and it was selected for me and it was biased. YouTube had selected it and put it right there. And I was just like, and then I thought, wait a sec, Ty, what's your criteria? And I was like, well, I'm on my treadmill. I want a 1-hour video that I can really listen to and get deep information. So I just scrolled past the 4-minute video, the 3-minute, the 6-minute. I had to do 3 different searches to find a really good video. So I couldn't procrastinate. That's why I said step 3, you got to get off your butt, even if sometimes it's just how you do your Google searches, your YouTube searches. Okay? Maybe you want to lose weight? Man, find out that criteria. Some of you don't need to lose weight, you need to gain weight. Some of you don't need to lose lose weight, you need to gain muscle. Get that criteria, find the books. Don't just buy the book on health that's the most popular. Sometimes the most popular means it's a better book, but not always. Sometimes people pushing an agenda. Don't just go to the gym that's the most convenient, but where you won't find the best trainers and the best support. Go to the damn gym that meets the criteria. Don't just, don't be afraid to get off your butt. Don't pick the career. That's the career your mom and dad had and your friends had. Pick the one that meets the criteria, that's common sense, that matches your strengths. And then make a plan also. Where are those social circle full of people that are pursuing that career and go hang out there? Man, it's so common sense as I say it, but I'm like, man, I wish somebody had just pounded this down my throat when I was like 18 and just been like, you will do this, Ty, because I kind of knew it. And even you listening, you might kind of know what I'm talking about, but it's not just what you know. It's what you do. So part of the reason I hope you're in this 12 Foundations program is because some of the stuff you're going to hear you already know. But I want to give you the confidence to know you got to do it. Okay, because sometimes we have ideas and we're like, that seems like that'd be good, but maybe we need to hear it from somebody else. So if you already knew all this, just take it this way. Implement it. Take it from me. You're hearing it now from two sources. Your own brain saying it's common sense, and me. And you can look up self-selection bias, and you can look up, obviously, procrastination. You can look up convenience bias. That's a bias that we've talked about that's related to self-selection bias. Doing what's the most convenient, even if it doesn't work for us. I'll just go through some of the things that I wish, I would have lived in a different place growing up. Well, once I was 18, I could live anywhere. Well, for a time there, I just kind of went where it was most convenient. One friend was like, what about going here? And I'm like, okay. But that friend didn't know what the heck he was talking about, so it was like the blind leading the blind. Where you live matters, You don't always have to live in a big city or a small town. That has nothing to do with it. In fact, now I got a farm that I go to, which is very rural, and I get a lot of value, but it's not just any farm, It's a farm that meets the criteria, and I know people who live around there, so I've got my own social circle. And it all is part of a master plan. You got to be the general of your life. Life has this way that if you don't make a plan, you just live out somebody else's plan. We were talking about marriage or dating. Life has this way that if you don't really go, here's my criteria for who I want to date, here's my plan on how to fight them. Step 3, here's how I'm going to get off my butt and do it. You just happen to just date people who aren't good matches for you just because, well, I don't know, they're in my phone and it's easy and they're a friend of my friend and and it's just and then you look back in hindsight, you're like, I wasted 2 years of my life. I wasted 3 years of my life. I wasted 6 months of my life here. I've done that with business, not really thinking through what I wanted to do and been like, well, I'm just going to start this business. And you go down that path, and after a year or two, you're like, yeah, I made some money, but man, I missed out on a better opportunity. Now, let me just say one disclaimer. There's no such thing as perfection on planet Earth. So I'm not saying you can only hang out with people if they're billionaires and they're perfect. No. I'm not saying you got to marry the most amazing person in the world. Look, the most amazing person in the world, Brad Pitt married Angelina Jolie. I'm not Brad Pitt. You're probably not Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie, right? So you got to settle a little bit. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't settle all. You got to settle a little bit. Sometimes Joel Salatin used to say, good enough is perfect. So you have your criteria. You say, I want to hang out with healthy, wealthy, happy people. But they don't have to be the wealthiest. They don't have to be always happy. It's more about just common sense. Are they moving in the same direction as you? Is your social circle full of those people that they're just in the same direction? Nobody's perfect and there's no perfection on planet Earth. So, but some things are more perfect than others. And on the flip side of that, some people aren't picky enough. So you need to get that good balance and just use common sense. We all deep down know when we're not being picky enough, and we all deep down know when we're being overly picky. So when you're picking your friends, when you're picking your career, when you're picking where you live, you might have to be patient. You might have to live in a place for a little while. That's not perfect. But if you're living in a horrible place, you need to move quick. Okay? It depends how bad it is. If it's pretty good, then you can make a plan, live there for a year or two, and then move. If you're in a career that's horrific, you're like toll booth operator. I always thought was the worst job. You sit there and fumes are blown by you and you collect $3. I'm like, I don't know why they don't just use robots for that. They should subject no human to that. But if that's your job, you might want to quit immediately. But if you got a decent career and decent job and you got some responsibilities, good enough is perfect for now, but you get your criteria, you make your plan, and you upgrade. And the goal of life, you ain't going to get everything you want right away. That's just common sense. There's nobody's ever, unless you inherit money and that doesn't even work right. You got to build up. So your life needs, some people's life is where they start at age 18, because before 18, you're under your parents, so you don't have much say. And their goal is to get up here in health, wealth, love, and happiness. And so, a lot of people have this misconception that you just go, and you're there. No, but what most people do is they're like and they're getting a little better, but too slowly. And then they, this is age 100. You're dead, and you never got what you wanted. So you got to just get that trajectory up. You won't get it right away, but you got to get there. And so you can't be too slow. You don't have to go instantly, but you can't go in 1% improvement every year. If you only put it this way, if you know statistics and math, if you only improve your life 1% per year, it takes 72 years to double the quality of your life. That's not good. So if you're 18 years old and you're like, I want my life to be twice as good as it is now. Health, wealth, love, and happiness. Well, age 90, that's 72 years later, you'll have double. That's too slow of a trajectory. You don't need to have it. Now, so some people are too patient. Their trajectory has them doubling at 90, which you're not going to enjoy it at 90. You don't need to be wealthy at 90. You're not going to drive a Ferrari and a walker and a cane. So but you also don't need to be successful by 19 if you're 18 or whatever. Okay? But if you can improve your life, now let's change this around. If you can improve your life 10% a year, now every 7 years you double the quality of your life. So you're 18 at 25. You're making double the income, double the happiness. Your health is, double. You're stronger, you're leaner, you're thinner. You feel better. Another 7 years, 32. That's only a 10% improvement per year. Man, if you improve yourself at about 35% a year, okay? 1/3, 35% better. Every 2 years you double. I mean, you don't need to go past that. It'll get too crazy. I've seen people get too successful too fast and you don't know what to do with it and you lose the money and all that. So don't worry about you don't need to go crazy with this thing. You just use common sense. Goes a long way. Select that group. Find the good people. Cut out the ones. You got your hamster ball of life, but you can't be alone, so you got to pull people in and you got to push some out sometimes. Remember, people change. So sometimes someone you had out, they get better and you bring them in. That rarely happens, but it does occasionally. Most people only get worse. I know that sounds cynical, but that's facts. Sorry. I'm not an optimist or a realist. Or a pessimist. I'm a realist. And trust me, if you follow what I'm saying, it'll work for you. It'll work. I wouldn't have put this video together. I wouldn't have spent an hour here on a Saturday. It's Sunday night. Well, I could be doing other stuff if I didn't think this would work. This is really me talking to myself. Maybe if I can find somebody who invents a time machine, I'll take this video, shoot it down to myself at age 18. So you leave videos to yourself for if you die, you leave it for your family or whatever. Like, if you're watching this is my last will and testament. Okay, well, I'm doing the reverse. I'm like, Ty, if they invented a time machine, you are watching this, and you are 18 watching this, please pay close attention to what I'm about to say, because it's going to make your life a heck of a lot better, a heck of a lot faster. And that's what you want. It's not just about getting your life better. It's got to be fast enough that you're not 90 when it happens. So, by the way, if any of you is working on that time machine thing, I'll gladly give you $1 million. My grandpa used to say Einstein predicted you could reverse time if you could go faster than the speed of light. So if any of you has a really fast car or it knows Elon Musk and you can go faster than the speed of light, maybe put this video in there and get it to me when I was 18. That would, I know you guys paid money to be in this program, but whatever you paid, it ain't enough. I'm not saying that because I want more money from you. I'm just saying I would have paid, if I could go hindsight, be 18 again, I'd pay I didn't have $1 million, but I would say over time I want to pay you $1 million. If you teach me this lesson and you get it to me and you implement it, it's worth $1 million. Your life will be completely different. Everybody else just does whatever is convenient. They hang out with the people they grow up with, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. I got some childhood friends, Zach, but I don't have all of them. I just use common sense. I select my group. I don't let it be selected for me. And the more you do that in every area, the gym, the books that you choose, the YouTube videos, the conferences that you go to, the cities that you live in or choose to live in, the places that you find who you're going to date, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. The more you do it systematically and logically, the happier you're going to be. It just comes down to that. Happiness comes from many sources. There's experiential happiness. There's something called memory happiness. But let's just use common sense. You're happier, and some of it's hormonal and stuff. I know it's complicated, but I'll put it this way. You'll always be happier if things are going well. And the reason life's never going to be perfect. Remember I said that earlier? But you can make it more perfect by implementing what you learned today. I promise you, I'm imploring you. One day I hope to meet you out on the street or at a conference or somehow and tell me, that's all I ask. You don't have to thank me for these videos or whatever. People thank me sometimes. I'm like, just tell me a cool story, and thank me for that. You don't have to thank me for everything because ultimately your life success is going to have everything to do with you, not me. But if this video can contribute to that, which I know it will, I don't always say that in every one of my videos. This one's important, that you not be the victim of other people's selection, that you select. The biggest victimhood starts, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's called the tyranny of your childhood. Now, some people have great childhoods. A lot of people have average childhoods. Some people have horrific ones. But the point is, the reason I call it the tyranny is you have to be born to somebody, unless there's test tube babies. So we all start out with kind of not a great deal. It's not a great deal that you got to be the victim of somebody else's, upbringing or somebody else bringing you up. But at least, hopefully you didn't have the worst childhood. I didn't have a great childhood. But once you're 18, and this video is for that. Now, if you're watching this and you're under 18, you can get ready. You can use this. Or some of you, emancipate yourself. I'm not saying you should do that, but didn't Jaden Smith emancipate himself from Will Smith or something? I actually met Jaden Smith. We text sometimes. Very interesting kid. Will Smith must be a cool guy. I've never met him. Actually, I have met him once, but I don't know him. His former chef, was my chef for a while. But, man, you will have the life that's the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Think about that. Sleep on that. That's a profound thing to say. You will be about as happy as the 5 people you spend the most time with. You'll be about as healthy as the 5 people you spend the most time with. You'll be about as wealthy as the 5 people you spend time with. You will have the love life, the social life, the body of the people you spend the most time with. Pick those people well. Don't just let them be picked for you. So here's what I want to do to wrap this up and unlock the next lesson. Leave a couple sentences below. Don't just leave a few words. It helps to really lock this in your memory. What's one specific change you're going to make? You don't have to put people's names. Don't say, I'm going to cut my mom, Susan Smith, out or something, because she might be in the program and get mad at me. Just put something like, but be specific. Don't just say, I'm going to change who I hang out with. I'm going to change my career. Like, be specific. Say something like, I'm going to stop going to XYZ and start going here. If it was Andrew leaving this, it'd be like, I'm going to stop going to nightclubs to meet girlfriends. I'm going to go and we're a lot of Latina women and take a Zumba exercise class. I don't know. Probably a stupid example, but put something like that below. That'll complete this lesson or this 12 Foundation step, whatever you want to call it, 12 Foundation video, audio, if you're listening. And I hope this helped you. Check out some of the other people's comments below so you get some ideas, creative juices. And yeah, what else? Hopefully I'll see you on one of the other 12 Foundations. By the way, if you're into my mastermind, you should click probably on my website. There's a mastermind link. And if you haven't come to one of my in-person seminars I bring in all these people, my business partners, my mentors, don't forget about those. Depending on when you're watching this video, I'm doing them once a month, but I go in spurts because I get burnout. So I stopped for 2 years doing them, and I'm back doing them now. So if you want to come soon before I get burnt out and I disappear into my bubble, my hamster bubble. All right, talk to you soon.